How's it going, dudes? Welcome back to the worst board game of all time, Tournament 2. We have officially reached the end of the terrible third, seeing 8 more of the worst board games from around the world being sent home, while the remaining titles all take yet another step closer toward claiming the crown. But which of these remaining games will be moving on, and which will be leaving for good? That's what we're here to find out with the official declaration of the third round results. But before we get to that, it's time to check in once again on the standings of the WBGOAT Bracket Challenge. Going into the second round, we had 5 perfect brackets remaining, and since then that number has expectedly dropped to 0. Good try, guys, we'll get them next time. After the second round, there is still a 5-way tie for first. However, it must be noted that none of the original 5 perfect brackets are among this group. These are 5 entirely different people that have risen to claim this spot after the Fab Five's generational fumbling. There are plenty of people who are waiting to do the same to them though, including last year's bracket challenge titan Bye and the Bunny, who led unopposed for most of the early rounds. They are currently sitting at 3,767th place, but do still have their champion in the running, so we might need to keep our eyes peeled for a possible revival from an all-time great. But before we can find out, we'll first need to declare which of our games will be heading home. As per usual, I'll be joined virtually by my color commentator, Joshua Jacobs. Pleasure to be here, Cam, and I cannot wait to get into the craziness that we just witnessed this round. It was certainly the most intense round we've seen so far, so let's go ahead and break it down by moving on over to the big bracket to see which of these games will be moving on. Starting us off with our final matchup of the Stink region, we will see a fierce contest between 2 of the most hated mascots in the bracket, the video board game Rap Rat versus Ms. Monopoly. The winners of their respective face-offs, both of these two will be leaving with at least some consolation prize, with the Rap Rat demolishing Vanilla Ice in their 1v1 rap battle to secure his Rap Bowl title, and Ms. Monopoly winning the first ever Hasbro Bowl and the claim to Worst Monopoly in a close victory over Monopoly Cheaters Edition. While these two are certainly happy with their wins so far, they are by no means satisfied, as just 1 win away is the title of Stink Region Champion and a straight shot directly into the shabby semis. The video board game Rap Rat has been aiming for this from the very beginning. Being the #1 overall seed, he has been laser focused on doing whatever it takes to make it through this region and into the finals, utilizing every part of his skill set and arsenal to ruthlessly take down his opposition with no remorse. Challengers have risen, but no one has managed to slow the Rat's advance, as they have been simply forced to wait their turn until he commands them to get out of the way, and they oblige. After all, when he asks you to do something, you must do it, because he's Rap Rat and he's the boss. But who better to challenge the boss than the girl boss, the self-made investment guru who just happens to be Mr. Monopoly's niece, Ms. Monopoly. Defeating her cheating uncle in one of the best matches of the tournament, Ms. Monopoly has earned her way here off the hard work she has put in toward obliterating any and all semblance of the message she was trying to convey, ultimately becoming the very thing she sought to destroy. Already showcasing that she is better than nations, celebrities, and her male counterpart, Ms. Monopoly is looking to shatter yet another glass ceiling as she aims to prove her superiority over rodents. This will be quite the tough task though, as while she is looking to be the first female to advance to the shabby semis, the Rap Rat is attempting to do the same as the first demon. And with only 1 spot up for grabs, only one of these games will be able to add their name to the record books and keep their championship hopes alive. To analyze this matchup a little further, let's bring Josh in to give us a new perspective on each of these titles. Yeah, Kim, so since we pretty much already covered all the parts that make these games bad, I'm gonna switch it up this round and try to convince you why you shouldn't vote for each of these titles. Starting off with the Rat, while his game and general presence are the stuff of nightmares, he does succeed in bringing some stellar atmosphere to the room. All throughout your Rattin' adventure, the players are going to be in a constant frantic pace, partially due to the ever-winding timer, and partially due to needing to take the least amount of time on their turn as possible lest they get penalized. So while the game itself might be a whole lot of nothing, you are never going to be bored during your run-through with the Rat, as the game is just too fast-paced to even let a second go to waste. Meanwhile, for Ms. Monopoly, it gets a lot of things wrong. Heck, it gets nearly everything wrong. But one thing that Ms. Monopoly does well is prevent the game from dragging by eliminating the Monopoly in-game syndrome. Everyone is on a timer here. Once the last property is bought, the game is over, so you won't be sitting there waiting for the sweet release of death while the other two players control the whole board anymore. The game will end before it starts to hurt. This also means that you'll need to consider making deals earlier, as if you wait too long, you won't have the time to properly build up your system before it's over. Overall, this is going to keep the game short and sweet for some quick Monopoly action, and while the experience won't be anywhere close to as good as the original, it will definitely end up taking less of your time as you work through everything that this lady has to offer. With the Stink region final now set, let's mosey on over to the Stank region to see what will be going down there. Here we will bear witness to one of the most brutal matchups of the entire tournament, Breaky versus Right or Racist. In the region that many had already written off as the pointless versus worthless setup, we are instead left stunned as Right or Racist managed to upset last year's runner-up, the Rock, Paper, Scissors game, sending shockwaves through the viewing public and snagging its ticket into the Queasy Quarterfinals from the jaws of one of our tournament favorites. To absolutely no one's surprise, his opponent will of course be the one and only Bray King. Fresh off of yet another dominant victory, only this time coming over one of the most premier competitors in public assistance, quelling any doubts that Breaky was only winning due to its Mickey Mouse schedule and firmly planting it as the game to beat. Breaky's success is mainly built upon the truly devastating offense that it uses to overwhelm its foes, carrying so many negatives in its favor that it practically drowns out any chance for its opponents to get a word in edgewise. On top of that, these negatives are so potent that even attempts to downplay them end up failing to slow the tide of destruction that Breaky leaves in its wake, leaving the worthless warrior on the brink of boredom as it struggles to find an opponent that can truly challenge it. But maybe it has run into just that, as instead of going up against its pointless counterpart, Breaky finds itself against a completely different kind of opponent, Right or Racist. This number 11 seed can hardly be described as the Cinderella story that it appears to be. As being one of the most selected bracket champions, the public already knew that this one was something special, and their faith was rewarded when this game began showcasing that it knew how to run one of the most difficult but effective playstyles in the tournament, the ability to weaponize emotion. Utilizing the hate that people feel towards its theme and components, Right or Racist is able to properly convey why voters should side with it without needing to explain anything about itself. A very difficult technique to master, but one that last year's tournament champion Adultery used effectively to carry it to the grand finals with ease. While not as potent, Right or Racist's rendition of this has been effective, leading it to upset after upset as it climbs its way toward the top of the Stank region, which it has finally reached here. But in order to properly secure its spot among the greats, it will first need to topple the king that stands in its way, as only one can rule the region and claim that spot in the shabby semifinals for themselves. Now to check out what could stand in the way of these games advancing, let's bring Josh in again to show us why you shouldn't vote for each title. Yeah, Cam, these two are very tricky to come up with positives for, but I think I've got some options for you. For Breaky, I'm going to double down on what I said in the last update and say that during those small bits of time where you are actually playing the game, it is a really engaging experience. The stress of presenting your key for battle, the nerves that come as you turn your key, the satisfaction that comes with taking another key's life, it's some pretty solid stuff, I gotta tell ya. Now granted, this is taking place over a maximum of a few seconds before a snap back to reality, but for those few seconds, this game really captures your attention and drags you into the moment, something that a lot of the other games in this bracket just don't have the ability to do. As for Right or Racist, it is really tough to come up with some kind of defense when even the true and false portions are using some dubious sources. But if we had to come up with something, at least the game mechanically works as intended. The rules are solid, there's no exploits, there's no soft locks. When you pick up the game, you can play it fairly easily and get the whole experience without having to work to fix the game. And if you think that's a backhanded compliment, think about how many games in this bracket just don't work properly. Are you getting a good experience when you open this one up? No. but at least you're getting a complete game with a solid enough rule set that you won't have to spend your time crafting repairs for. There are plenty of words within the Urban Dictionary that can be used to describe right or racist, but broken is not one of them. And seeing that that word is the entire premise of its competition, we'll need to wait and see whether the voters decide if Raw is the game to take down the king. With the top half of the bracket locked in, we only have 4 games remaining that will be advancing to the Queasy Quarterfinals. So let's go ahead and move over to the Stunk region to see a matchup between 2 of our fan favorite competitors, Bumps and Grinds versus the Campaign for North Africa, the Desert War, 1940 to 43. This matchup is brought to you by some pretty close margins, with Bumps and Grinds shaking off the Career Girls in a decently contested match, while TCFNA TDW 40 to 43 won a hard-fought bout against the Mogul that could have gone either way. In this battle of fire versus firepower, both games are looking to advance forward in order to strengthen their legacy. Bumps and Grinds so far has been a successful representative of the Diplomat Sales Co., delivering some solid wins for their provider and looking to bring back another shabby semifinals appearance to follow in the footsteps of his big brother Adultery. Meanwhile, North Africa has continued to put up good, not flashy wins in order to make sure that it gets the job done, hoping to avenge the shabby semifinals loss from last year and nab that shot at the title that evaded him. Also knowing that a win here will take the title of winningest game in tournament history from RPS as a bonus. Both games have a strong case as to why they deserve to become the Stunk Region Champion, with Bumps and Grinds being the only representative of the games that can kill their players club still in the running, as no other game has been able to hold a candle to the crazed situation its rules put you in if you play the game as intended. The Campaign for North Africa is also in a league of its own though, being the only board game in the bracket to never have been fully completed a single time. Now, there have been recorded instances of the scenarios being completed, but as for the full campaign, it has continued to elude the grasp of gamers everywhere for well over 40 years. And a big part of that is how the game feels to play. This is one of the hardest parts of North Africa to convey, but luckily our North Africa specialists at the War with a Mate podcast have undergone the task of attempting to play through this monstrosity and would like to describe how it actually feels to try.
The campaign for North Africa doesn't want to be played. The rules are laced with mockery for those that might try.
It's an exercise in bookkeeping and information referencing that happens to have game pieces in the box. We struggle to find a surface to lay it out on the map alone, and we can comfortably say that learning the rules from scratch as 2 inexperienced wargamers and finally setting it up takes north of 30 hours.
A game where the movement of a single piece requires referencing half a dozen tables, fuel, stores, terrains, breakdowns. It's a trucking simulator and military fatigues.
Richard Berg created a time capsule that captures the horrors of war viewed through the prism of every man being seen, not as a number, but an entire spreadsheet page each. We say all of this less than half a turn in.
Thank you for that, gentlemen, and best of luck to you. Overall, this match can act as a substitute for the Diplomat North Africa finals that many were hoping to see last year, as only one of these prestigious storylines can continue on to claim their spot in the history books. But with so many things against these titles, let's have Josh come in and take a look as to why these games deserve to stop here. Yeah, Cam, these games both have a lot going for them in this respect, so I'll start out with the Campaign for North Africa. Now, I have seen a lot of people going with the work of art defense for this one, but personally, I'm not in support of that as we're not looking at it as a work of art. We're looking as to how it works as a board game, which is what it was sold as. Instead, I'm going to be taking the angle that this game is great for one very specific crowd of monster wargame fans. There is not a game out there that better exemplifies attention to detail than this one. It is the premier title if you are looking to put together an experience as close to the real thing as you can get. So for those people, this one is going to scratch that itch really well. Now, I did say great for this crowd, not perfect, as the gameplay is going to wear on them eventually like it wears on everyone else. But for what it brings to the massive table needed to support it, there is a lot on offer here. As for Bumps and Grinds, yes, it is dangerous. It has the fire, it has the flames, but that's pretty much all that it has. The gameplay is standard, the rules are standard, the cards are standard, if a little odd. Heck, it even brings something new to the naughty board game genre by having the first player that gets undressed be the winner. Bumps and Grinds really is just a one-trick pony when it comes to this tournament. As if the designers had done any kind of thinking as to how the candle would work, I don't think this one would have even qualified. It is, for the most part, just a standard naughty board game. However, that one trick that it does have is very effective, and it isn't seen anywhere else in the remaining pool. So it'll be up to the voters to decide which of these two deserve that distinction of Stunk Region Champion. With most of the field set, let's waste no time heading on over to the Stonk region to meet our final two games competing in the Queasy Quarterfinal, the Game of Life Target Edition versus 15 Love. In one of the biggest upsets of the tournament, Target the Game of Life is moving on to face the Tennis Tyrant after eliminating the first #1 seed of the bracket in the Lord of the Rings trilogy. In addition to one of the biggest upsets, this bout also gave us one of the best matches. As while 15 Love saw no struggle in its takedown of the radio racketeer Dr. Laura, Target and the Lord were engaged in a back and forth battle, with the match being an even 50-50 around the midpoint of voting before Target launched a second half streak that LOTR just could not answer. What is left now is a 6-12 Queasy Quarterfinal matchup that sees Target competing with its third repeat competitor, as it continues to build on its impressive tournament resume. The success that it has found is mainly due to its two-pronged offensive, consisting of a physical drain of boring gameplay that leaves you slumped with boredom and a mental drain of having to deal with the corporate psyop that Target continuously hits you with. But this unique playstyle has yet to go up against something that also excels in that area, and if there's one thing that understands boring, it's 15 Love. Biggs' tennis talent has steadily rallied the crowd behind him as he posts confident win after confident win, outsmarting his opponents with a tricky serve that is tough to return. Off the rip is the devastating realization of what playing an entire regulation tennis match using only 2 dice would entail. And just as the opponent can get a grip on this, the ball twists to deliver an ankle breaker with how the entire thing is based on luck despite the box's claims. This tough to return strategy has allowed 15 Love to amass huge leads that the game simply can't recover from, granting Biggs win after win as he soars past where he ended last tourney to enter a new level of play. And with both of these titles now going up against the lowest seed they've faced so far, they'll need to prove that they are ready for any surprises that the other has in store if they want to make it any further. But with their weaknesses well known, let's have Josh take a look at their strengths and showcase what could cause these games to be heading home. Yeah, Cam, these two are pretty similar in terms of their detriments, but they do have some unique positives. In terms of Target Not the Game of Life, this title does have a surprising amount of strategy that you can go for. You're always going to want to be thinking about your next move here. Should I go for another department? Should I try to nab a better deal? Should I hit the middle in hopes of grabbing a target circle red card? There are a ton of different ways to play that can change mid-game based on what you spin and where your opponents are. This means that no two games are going to see you play the same way. So while you might not enjoy your time in the store, there is plenty of room to experiment with what paths you would like to take through it. As for 15 Love, this one was very tricky to come up with a positive for, I'm not gonna lie. But with the game playing the way that it does, it could function very well as a background game to fill time. For instance, if you've got a lot to talk about with some friends and need to keep your hands busy, you can bust out Bigsy and hold some meaningful conversations without having to put too much thought into the game. It can also act as a supplement to this convo, as it won't take away from the talks, but if something crazy happens, you and your friend can react accordingly, adding another layer to the setting like a terrible version of NFL Blitz. Now, I wouldn't say that this would be my first choice for this, but with the humorous box cover and the simple gameplay, you could probably get away with roping your friend into a game before they realize how long they'll be stuck in there for. And after that, they're all yours. With all of our Queasy Quarterfinal games set in stone, let's have Josh give us his final thoughts on the matchups he would like to see take place in the Shabby Semis. Yeah, Kim, we are expecting some stellar battles to be taking place once we get into the final rounds, and I've got the down low on which matches I think would be the most entertaining. Let's start off on the east side of the bracket because it's a lot less messy with what it's got. First off, I think Breaky continues its winning streak here despite how strong Rider Racist has become, so we'll go ahead and lock that in here. As for its opponent, we've got a choice between the Cinderella of last year versus the Cinderella of this year. A boring bout, if you will. And even though Target is going up against the lowest seed it's faced all tournaments, I think Biggs' experience and intelligence are going to work well in his favor here to outwit his corporate competitor. So go ahead and give me Breaky versus 15 Love for our first Shabby Semis matchup. As for the west side of the bracket, we have all kinds of theories as to what matchups we could hope to see. Could the Flames cleanse the Rats and rid this world of his evil? Could Ms. Monopoly get her revenge on the Diplomat Sales Co. after Adultery eliminated her last year? Or could we finally see that highly anticipated Irvin Rommel versus Ms. Monopoly matchup? Out of all of these possibilities, I do have one that I think is the most likely to happen. The video board game Rap Rat versus the Campaign for North Africa, the Desert War, 1940 to 43. And while these two might not have the personal connection like the others, the match would be full of storylines as the Rat tries to live up to his seeding and as North Africa tries to prevent a repeat of last year's loss. All in all though, I think any of these games advancing forward would produce a wildly entertaining result. So we'll need to keep our eyes peeled as you won't want to miss a single second of this hot board gaming action. Well said, Josh. I think this is going to be an electric collection of matches, for sure. But while these games will be celebrating yet another win, let's not forget about the games that fell just short of their chance at glory with our devastating losses. Less here for the brackets being busted and more here for what its loss represents, the Lord of the Rings board game trilogy is the very first #1 seed to be leaving the bracket. Taken down in a brutal upset from Target, LOTR was unable to get out of its own soft lock to win the people over, putting up a good fight in a back and forth match that Target eventually just ran away with. This means that its status as the weakest #1 seed is now set in stone, a very distressing development for the 25 brackets that had the Fellowship making that long journey. For our first major hit toward our bracket believers, we find the exit of the #2 seed, Joel Harden's Mogul. Falling in the complexity battle to North Africa, the Mogul was unable to stand against the sheer depth of TCF&A's mechanics, bowing out in the terrible third, much to the chagrin of the 75 bracket believers that had it expanding its real estate empire all the way to the finals. From 1-2 seed to the next, this round also saw the exit of Mr. Mansion's beloved Monopoly Cheaters Edition. MCE was unable to stand up to the raw power possessed by his niece, Ms. Monopoly, losing control of the Monopoly family in a ruthless takeover orchestrated by the investment guru herself. Tossed out onto the street, the only thing the cheater will be taking with him are the 165 bracket believers that put their money behind his schemes, and he will now have to explain to them why they will be heading home empty-handed. But by far the most devastating loss of the tournament thus far has come from last year's runner-up, the Rock, Paper, Scissors game. The victim of yet another massive upset by Writer Racist, RPS failed to bring in the same level of success seen in last year's run, only making it to the terrible third and falling well before it could take another shot at Adultery. The third most believed in game in the entire bracket, RPS's loss now condemns 393 people to a life without their champion, as RPS is now left to consider whether or not he really is as pointless as he had hoped. Overall, this round was the most destructive for the bracket pool thus far, as there are now 1,094 brackets that are left without their respective champions. This leaves only 73.7% of brackets with their top pick left intact, a massive drop from last week's numbers that will continue to get smaller as the pool of games keeps decreasing. As for our remaining 8 games, we have a wide range of confidence levels from the crowd as to their chances to win it all. Breaky, of course, has the most believers behind it, but as we've seen today, simply having a larger following doesn't mean you are guaranteed the win. So we'll have to see if some of our smaller groups can manage to rise up and prove that they were the ones who had it right all along. Only time will tell, and looking forward, we still have 8 competitors that are just a few steps away from their shot at the crown. The Queasy Quarterfinals are about to begin, so check out how your bracket is doing and be ready to vote once more for your least favorite titles. Let us know below which of our remaining games you will be rooting for, and if your bracket is still in any shape that wouldn't be pronounced legally dead. Get ready for the Queasy Quarterfinals as we get one step closer to finding the worst board game of all time. Signing off for the NBGA, I am KamSandwich. Thank you for watching and have a fantastic day.